Hi, I'm Selena and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing two more reviews for two more books, and the books I'm going to be reviewing today are Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir and Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend. As always, I'm not going to get into spoilers with either of these books, but I am going to get into more details than you may like if you don't want to know a lot about the premise or the book itself. So if that's you, I would maybe skip these reviews. So let's get started with Gideon the Ninth. So this is an adult sci fantasy, I'm gonna say. I guess it probably leans more towards science fiction, but it's also very fantasy, so sci fantasy. And it never really appealed to me in the synopsis, but before I'd read it. But recently, I've heard a lot more people talking about it, including Katie from Brightness Katie Reads, and when that was the first pick for the Sorcery and Stardust book club that she runs, I wanted to join in to read it, and I did read it, but I didn't make it in time for the live show, but that's okay because it was really good. So the premise of this book is basically we live in a world, a cosmic system with several planets, I think like 9 planets. Each of these planets specializes in a different area of necromancy, I'm pretty sure, and have all developed pretty different cultures and stuff. And we follow Gideon from the 9th house, or the planet that focuses mainly on raising skeletons, basically. And Gideon herself is not a necromancer, but she is a ward of this house, basically. She's been treated like a servant, treated like trash her whole life, and she is tasked with escorting the lady of the 9th house, whose name I think is Harrowhawk Nonagesimus, but she mostly goes by Harrow. So Gideon is going with Harrow to this other planet where Harrow is going to take part in a competition to become a lictor, which is basically a god. The different houses can send people to go from their places, necromancers from their houses, to go and try and become lictors and ascend to godhood. And so Harrow goes to do that, to try and save her house from ruin, and she takes Gideon along as her cavalier. Gideon is not a necromancer, as I said, but she's very handy with the sword and things, so she's there as basically a bodyguard. And Gideon and Harrow really do not get along. They have a lot of history, and they just they don't have an easy history to navigate, and so they're trying to navigate that and their dislike for each other and their very complex relationship while they're in a very dangerous house called Canaan House, going through these tasks, and everything's very dangerous and they have to really learn to work together. While this is going on, there's also a murder mystery plot going on, and so you follow those two going through these trials as the stakes are getting higher and people are dying. And it's a really fun plot. I had a lot of fun with this book, and I thought this was really good. It has kind of an odd start because we start at the 9th house and then we are there for very little time before we leave to go to Canaan House, but I really do think that once we get to Canaan House and in the trials and everything, things get a lot easier to read, they get a lot faster, they get a lot more fun, and so I really enjoyed that, especially that second half of the book. It was very nice. So this plot is really fun, and it's a very classic plot archetype where you go through different tasks, but it does it very differently. My one complaint though, or a complaint I had, was basically that the plot I found a little bit hard to follow, and I was a bit confused as we were going through the house, and it was a little hard to follow. And that's a very common complaint of Gideon the Ninth, and I think that if you are someone who really needs your plot to be rock solid and completely no plot holes, easy to understand, fully with everything that's going on, then this book may be a little bit hard for you. Like, you may not enjoy the way this plot is done. I personally usually don't like to not know what's going on, but for this one it was fun, so I was just able to sort of let that take over and be on this wild ride with the characters. The characters don't know much about what's going on and you don't know with them, and if you can have fun with it, then you might like this book, because I do think the plot is fun. But if you're someone who really needs to understand everything or to pick a plot apart, this may not be the one for you. I personally can't sit through and pick through plot holes and things because I have trouble keeping track of that, and so I have heard that there are plot holes, but I personally couldn't poke through them just because that's not the way my brain works. But if it's the way yours works, I'm just warning you, you may find that that's an issue for you. So people have said this is a very character-driven book. I feel like this is probably about 50% plot and 50% character, because the plot is very prevalent. We are really in the middle of a murder mystery plot, which designates the book to be a bit more plot-driven, because you do have a lot of plot happening to the characters and you need to place a lot of things in order to plant these mysteries and have the intrigue. It's very plot driven, but it's also quite equally character driven. I feel like it really does both pretty well. I do think the character is where it shines though. The character work is more stellar than the plot. As I said, the plot could be a little messy, but the character work was really good. Gideon was a really interesting character to follow and be in the head of. We're in a very deep POV for Gideon, and Gideon has this wit about her, this snark about her that was really refreshing to read. For some people, I could see her humor not really vibing with them and get her getting really annoying. For me, I thought she was refreshing. I thought she was fun. She had a refreshing sort of snark about her, and she also had plenty of emotions, and she wasn't this sort of like always has to be tough, always has to be like the most scary person in the room. In fact, people most of the time underestimate Gideon, and I really enjoyed not having her, I don't know, flex her muscles all the time and then surprise people. I was really rooting for her. I thought that she had a good heart and she was just good, I thought. But I mean, and this whole book requires people to be a little bit more morally gray, but Gideon I just thought was such a nice character to follow because she has that mix of snark where she will tell you off, and she's also pretty deadly and amazing at what she does, and that's fighting. And she's also got emotions that she just feels very well-rounded. She feels like a normal person. She feels like she has multiple facets of her, and I really enjoyed that about Gideon. Harrow has less facets, but I feel like that's mostly because we are so deeply in Gideon's point of view. We don't really ever get out of her point of view for most of the book. Like, we really don't get a peek into what Harrow's head looks like. And Harrow is also quite private. And so even when Harrow has dialogue, there are moments when Harrow can let you in a little bit, but it always takes a lot longer. And so Harrow is someone who I did not feel attached to right away, but as the book went on and I learned more about her and I got to know her a little bit more and she developed, I did end up really liking Harrow's character. And I feel like in later books, if this series starts like showing Harrow's point of view more, then this author will be able to pull off the same character work that she did with Gideon in this one with Harrow. So yeah, the plot was fun, the characters were great, but my favorite thing about this book was the relationship dynamics. I really enjoyed the relationship between Harrow and Gideon. I thought that they had a great dynamic. It was really interesting to see and to watch unfold and to watch it complicate itself and for you to get more information and be more privy to the things that have happened to them in their past. I just thought their dynamic was brilliant. They had great dialogue. You could really feel how complicated their relationship is and as you were reading it, and I just think that it was the center of this book and it was really done quite well. It really does feel like the heart of this book is this relationship, and you see how it develops. You see them have to work together and you see them have to go through the plot together, and I really enjoyed it. And then on top of that, the other relationships in the book were really good too. You follow a lot of characters, most all through Gideon's eyes, but Gideon has a lot of different relationships and dynamics with a lot of the characters who are also at Canaan House, and I thought that those relationships are really interesting too, also written pretty well. Those characters are a little bit less fleshed out, but I feel like their dynamic with Gideon was pretty fleshed out, and not so much so that it doesn't keep you guessing on whether they're trustworthy or not, because this is a murder mystery, but I still think that the relationships you were able to get a sense of their dynamic, and you were constantly watching characters kind of form acquaintances with each other and have interactions, and it was really good. I really enjoyed how relationship driven this book was. The dialogue personally never really annoyed me, but I could see it annoying some people. I thought it never felt awkward to me. I thought it was good. The writing style is similar. I thought that it could come off to be a little odd. It did come off as a little odd at times to me, but mostly because I was listening to the audiobook, I feel like that absorbed a lot of the awkwardness. The way that the author read it made it flow very well that it would not have in my head. And so I really enjoyed that and thought that it added to my experience a lot. I do recommend this audiobook if you like audiobooks. The writing style tries to be kind of quirky, but it also has pretty beautiful and poignant moments, so I really did enjoy the writing of this book. The magic system of necromancy, I did not have high hopes of liking when I went into this book. It just didn't appeal to me, mostly because I thought it was just like raising skeletons from the dead and having them do your bidding. And that's part of what it is in this book. That's what Harrow is known for doing. but it's not everything, and I really enjoyed the way that necromancy was built up with many different forms. And I thought that the intrigue was great. It kept me interested in everything that was happening. It was a good magic system, and I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. This book ended with a bang. This author does not pull any punches, and I'm really excited to continue with the series. There's 2 more books, but only one of them is out. But yeah, I'm excited for it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Now we are on to the second book of this review, which is Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend. So Wundersmith is the sequel to Nevermore, and oh my goodness, did I love this so much. This was a 5-star. I think I loved it more than book 1, and it became one of my favorite series with this book. This is now one of my favorite series. I loved this book so much. I'm gonna try and talk to you about why I love this book so much without going into spoilers for Nevermore. This is the sequel, so you can watch this review without reading Nevermore. I'm not gonna spoil anything from it. This book picks up where Nevermore left off, and the plot thickens. We just continue to follow Morrigan as she is navigating her life and the revelations that Nevermore left her with. And that's really all I can say about her journey as far as the plot goes. But what I can say is that we do continue Morrigan's character development and the development of the themes that Nevermore started. For example, Morrigan, in her character development in the last book, we know that Morrigan struggles with kind of a self-esteem issue and thinking that she's a bad person, and that internal struggle is really amplified and explored in this book. We also continue exploring themes of family and friends and what people you love will do for you, and also what children should and should not be put through. All those themes around parenthood and raising children and things like that, those continue, but it's done in a way that's obviously it's not written like for adults. Like it's a children's book, but it is, you know, it does explore the themes of how children are especially in these fantasy books, are a lot of times really outcast or are expected to do really dangerous things. And I don't think that Nevermore ever takes itself lightly in terms of that. It never just does that stuff to work with the plot. It does explore those things, and Wundersmith did continue what Nevermore started in that regard. And it did that stuff while being able to keep the book slightly dark, but not too dark. It expanded our cast. It really complicated and deepened the relationship between the villain and his relationship to the plot. It also is a really cool contained setting that is other than the one that we saw in Nevermore, the Hotel Deucalion. We have another contained setting along with the hotel, as well as we get to see a lot more of Nevermore, the city as a whole, and we get to see more world building. And we also increased the amount of magic that was in the book, and we kept the same wonder and sort of nonsensical, just childlike wonder of the first book. I thought that this book was amazing in all of those regards. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. This book really, really worked for me in pretty much every regard. I mean, Morrigan is an amazing character to follow. Her cast is amazing, and we really do get to see her internal struggles put on display in this book, and I really, really enjoyed that. And then, I mean, we also just get so much more intricate plotting and just things getting more complicated, and it made me super excited to see where the rest of this book series is going to go. I've heard there's going to be 6 books, and I am so excited because I just can't even wait to see what this author does with this series. I thought this book followed so well from Nevermore, which I loved so much. My favorite sequels are always the ones which can follow from the first book and maintain what I loved about the first book while going where the story needs to go and pushing things in a different direction. I don't need you to redo book 1 for me to love book 2, and I also don't want you to take a sharp left turn away from book 1, because then I'm gonna get lost. But this book really walked the line between both of those and never did either one. It took this story to new places while keeping everything that was good and expanding on everything that was good from Nevermore. This is my favorite in the series so far. I truly cannot recommend the series enough. I think it is amazing, and more people should go on this journey with Morrigan. That was my review for Gideon the Ninth and Wundersmith. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.